and welcome back to the Prison Officer Podcast. Before we get to our guest today, I just want to take a minute to thank one of our sponsors. During my 29 years in corrections, I've used or supervised PEPPERBALL hundreds of times. Now, as a master instructor for PEPPERBALL, I get to go out across the country and teach others about the versatility and effectiveness of the PEPPERBALL system. PEPPERBALL is always the first option in my correctional toolbox because it's got the ability to transition quickly from area saturation to direct impact, using non-lethal organic projectiles. And with impact ranges from 0 to 150 feet, PEPPERBALL's perfect for cell extractions or fights out on the rec yard. To learn more about PEPPERBALL, go to www.pepperball.com or click the link below in today's show notes. PEPPERBALL is the safer option first. And if you haven't done so, please take a moment to like my podcast, or better yet, hit that subscribe button so that you'll be notified when the next episode comes out. Well, hello and welcome back to the Prison Officer Podcast. My name is Mike Cantrell, and today I am with a gentleman that a lot of you correctional officers probably know, but you didn't know that you knew him. His name is Larry Peoples. He's actually the author of the Correctional Officer's Prayer, which I've seen. I've seen it listed as unknown author. I didn't know who it was till you contacted me.
Yes, sir.
And but it's been everywhere. I've seen it used at memorials. I know you'll tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay.
But you've had a long career in corrections, and I'm excited to get you here on the podcast and talk to you. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Mike, for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, I always kind of have the same format. I like to hear how people got into corrections and how your career built. So, why don't you tell me about where you grew up and how your life started?
Well, here living in Florida, I'm actually a native Californian, and I left. My father retired from the military when we were in California, and so we moved to this little town here, at one stoplight at the time. But he retired from the Navy here in Florida, and he moved us. And I was 16 years old, and you talk about a culture shock moving from Southern California, where we were living in near San Diego,
right,
to this little small town. It was quite a culture shock. It was 76 or 77,
right.
and here I am, a California boy with puka shells and a flowered shirt and long hair, and here I come to this little burg here. I was kind of like a fish out of water.
Sure.
So I finished high school here and went back to California for a couple of years, and it really didn't feel like home anymore. So I came back to Florida, and that was in April of '81.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated from high school in '79. And my father at the time was working at Union Correctional. It's the old Rayford prison. They used to call it Rayford prison. Okay. He was working there. He says, "Boy, go get you a job down the street, across the river at FSP." And I said, "Well, okay, I'll go try it."
Uh-huh.
So I go in there and I get a job, and it's all good. And I stayed there for 10 years and did various things.
So what did he do? What did your father do in the Navy before he retired?
He was a storekeeper. So
okay.
I had all kinds of good stuff, Marine Corps knives and web, the coral shoes and all kinds of good stuff. He brought stuff home for me.
How'd he fall into corrections? Do you know?
He had some former Navy friends or Navy people that told him, "Hey, go to Union Correctional, go to Department of Corrections. It's a good job and pays well, and it's a good retirement." So he went to Union CI and got a job there, and he worked at the warehouse. So he really wasn't an inside officer. He wore an officer's uniform, but he really wasn't. So he worked with mostly minimum inmates his whole career.
Sure. Okay. But that was kind of your introduction to corrections.
Yeah, that was my introduction to corrections. Yeah. So
tell me about going to work there. What was that like? What did you expect, and what did you find when you walked through that grill?
I knew nothing about corrections. Absolutely nothing except what I've seen on television. And I walked through. If you know anything about Florida State Prison, it's designed. It's a central hallway, and one end of it is like 11 housing units on one end, and in the middle, what they call Times Square, that's intersect together. Okay. And then on the other end is the clinic, and it's about a quarter of a mile from one end of the hallway to the other end of the hallway. And the reason I know that is because I've run that before,
Sure.
from confinement up to medical, and from medical back to the confinement unit. And so the first day, of course they bring us out to the administration building. We fill out paperwork, and they tell us yada yada. And so we're all walking in together as a group, and you come up to that first door,
Right.
uh, marching in line and mopping, and it was like, okay, this is real. This is no BS. This is no movie.
Mm-hmm.
This is the real thing. And I'm like, okay, you got to make up, Larry. You got to make up your mind. You're going to do this, or you're not going to do this. And I did think about it for a second, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I think I'm going to do this. I think I can do this.
Yeah.
And the guy behind me, funny because the guy behind me, he looked down that same hallway and he said, I ain't doing this.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this. Nope. I'm going back outside.
Glad he figured it out then.
And exactly, because I wouldn't want him to be the one to have to come save my butt. And he,
right.
So that was my first day walking around, basically taking a tour of the place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Florida State Prison is designed where you have, at that time in 81, when I started, we had 6 open population wings. Each wing had 96 inmates.
Okay.
And then the remainder 5 wings was 6, 7, 10, were confinement units. And at that time, our wing was just the only death row we had. We had some on S wing, but mostly it was R wing, and that was a 102-man cell.
Okay.
So, and then of course Q wing was the wing that stuck out on the end of Florida State Prison, and that's where the worst of the worst in the state, and the death house was on the bottom floor of FSP there with the electric chair.
Sure.
And so that's when we were still using the electric chair. And so that's what we had. We had outside, we had towers, of course, guard towers all along the outside perimeter.
How many tiers were these housing units, just so I can get it in my mind? Were they multiple tiers, 4 or 5, or was it 1 or 2?
It was 3.
3, okay.
3 tiered, and
how many
everything
total?
Was on the second floor. Total wings.
That's
Let's
a
see.
huge prison, it sounds like.
I'm gonna count here. JKLMNPQRSTUVW. 13 wings. Okay, 13. There were 13 wings. Yeah, and
so you're holding 1,500 inmates.
1,200. Yeah, we had single man cells.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was full all the time. We had to, the Bluebird bus would have to bring in and bring out because we got to max. And at that time, the department was under a court order. We couldn't have so many over capacity and all that. So,
sure.
So that's what FSP was. Each wing was its own, basically. Within a wing, we had, like I said, we had 6 open pop wings. So we had about 600 inmates in open population.
What surprised you the most? What was the thing that was hardest to get used to, stepping from civilian into being a correctional officer in there? Was it the violence? Was it the way the manipulation? Was it what did you see that was most surprising for you?
I grew up in San Diego with a lot of gang violence, so I've seen people stabbed. So that wasn't really a problem. I mean, I haven't seen him stabbed 67 times like one guy did, but it is the constant working you as an officer. They're trying to get something from you, or work you, or ask you questions about this and about that, trying to get a handle on who you are and how you are and what kind of an officer you're going to be. I mean, it's constant, and they all work on you. It's all different people, but they're all working on you, trying to figure out who you are, whether you're going to give them what they want, or whether you're not going to give them what they want, or whether you're going to follow the rules or not follow the rules. So, yeah,
I'll agree with that. That was the hardest. I don't think I'd ever experienced that level of manipulation, and it was constant. I think that was the hardest thing on me. New staff don't understand the value that's placed on information inside. So if they can just get tiny bits of information that gets sold around the institution to people who want to set you up or who want to manipulate you or get a little bit from you. And it may be nothing more than just, your favorite NASCAR driver. Well, now that inmate that wants to manipulate you, he comes up and he says, "Oh yeah, you like this guy in the races, don't you?" And now you've got something in common. And I think that's something I wish they'd have talked to me more about. I mean, I made it through, but I wasn't ready for that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
How was your academy?
Oh, well, back in the day, the old days,
Yeah.
in '81, we didn't go to the academy right away. We were on OJT, on the job training.
Sure.
And I guess that's the department's way of saying, was this person going to make it? Am I going to waste any money on this guy before I send him to training? So I was on the job for almost a year before I went to training to learn about being a correctional officer. And by the time I'd done that, gone to school, I knew pretty much, everything about that building.
Sure.
So they were just basically teaching me book stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, it's important that you learn the law and the rules and all that stuff. But back there in 81 and 82, the Department of Corrections in the state of Florida added, and initially it was 160 hours. That was it, 160 hours, and you could be certified. And then 2 years later, they added an additional 160 hours of officer training. So in 83, I worked 12-hour days. I worked 4 days at school, and then I went to the unit and I worked the Florida midnight shift. And I did that for 6 months, trying to get the other 160 hours to be certified.
Wow.
So that's how they did it back then. So yeah, that's what we did.
Interesting. Now, in Florida, are correctional officers down there peace officers? Are you law enforcement?
You mean with arrest powers? Not specifically. I mean, we can arrest an inmate, but as far as going out to Burger King or writing a ticket or anything, no, we can't do that.
Yeah, limited arrest powers. Yeah.
We're still considered.
There's a lot of talk about that going on around the country because more and more places, New Jersey, California, of course, have been ahead of that for a long time. They have full police powers, full arrest powers, and then you've got other places where they don't have any. So I think that's a discussion that's coming to the head more and more these days, is how we're going to go forward with correctional officers. I don't believe, I know for so long, and you saw this because it was your era too, but for so long they tried to make corrections part of law enforcement. Well, you're part of law enforcement, and my vision is we're not part of law enforcement. We're part of the justice system. You've got, judges and courts, you've got police officers, and then you've got corrections, and we're our own entity. And I think we need that respect for that own entity. So go ahead.
I always like to say that I always talk about first responders and all this other stuff. And I'm like, that's great, first responders. I said, but you never hear about correctional officers, first responders. And my answer to that is we're not first responders because we're already there in the middle of it. So we're not responding to nothing. We're there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we don't get the bonuses and the discounts and all the crap that goes on the outside. So we don't have to worry about that.
Excuse me. So death row was one of the places that you worked there fairly early on.
Yes.
What was your thoughts about that? I mean, I dealt with some death row at Missouri State Pen, and it wasn't something I thought about before I walked through the door. And then you have to deal with the fact that the state is mandated to take this person's life. Did you have any thoughts about that, or?
First of all, the potential for something to happen to you, to be killed anywhere would be death row, because what do they got to lose, right? What's another death sentence? They can only kill you once. But as a rule, the quietest place to work and the most not full of a bunch of stuff going on was death row, because they all had a television in their cell. They had a radio in their cell. They got canteen privileges every day. So they were pretty quiet and laid back. And it was a pretty easy duty to be on death row, work on death row. Now, you always had to be, of course, vigilant, as anywhere you go. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had some famous serial killers back in the day when I started. Bundy and Otis Toole and Gerald Stano and Jesse Tafaro and people like that. There. So
Sure.
yeah, but yeah, death row was one of the easiest, quietest places I worked.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Did you ever move into being part of some of the executions?
Yes, I got to be. When you're a CO, you get to do death watch. You sit in front of the inmate cell down on the bottom floor queuing. It's called
Mm-hmm.
death watch. When they sign their warrant, they have between 30 to 60 days of when their warrant is active, and you have somebody sitting down there in front of their cell front monitor. It's called.
Mm-hmm.
And you sit there and you note everything they do. They eat, they sleep, whatever they do, you write it down, and you're there the whole shift. And wherever they go, if they go inside the prison to the medical department, you follow them. You go with them with the logbook, and you log everything they do. And I've done that before, many times, sitting there
Right.
in midnight shift or whatever. When I made sergeant, I got to be a van driver. I got to do with the grill gate monitor, which is the sergeant down on the bottom floor queuing who watches the officer. I also got to be part of the execution team.
Wow.
And my last job there at FSP for the last, I'd say about 3 years, was I had the keys to the bottom floor queuing. So I was the one who had all the keys to get in and out and from the front to the back of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually let the executioner in and walked them over to where they sat, waiting for the execution. They had what they call executioner's lounge, in
Right.
it's a little room with a couch on it. And so that's what I did for about 3 years. My last 3 years at FSB. I left there in
Mm-hmm.
'91.
Okay. Any any hesitation with death penalty cases? I mean, or is that just I know my own thoughts, but was that just a job? It's just what you were mandated to do, and that's the end of it? Or did you ever have any problems doing that, I guess? Thoughts?
No, they put themselves there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the law said that if they did certain things, heinous crimes, that they were going to die.
Right.
And it wasn't my job to judge them or whatever. It's my job to watch them. I'm not their savior. I'm their keeper.
Sure.
And so I just whatever the law said was fine. And the irony of that, Mike, I don't know if you know this, you probably don't. Uh, Later on in my career, my middle brother killed 4 people in California
Wow.
and was on death row in California in San Quentin. Uh, and he was there from 2001 until 2021. He was there for 20 years. He hung himself in his cell.
Wow.
He just couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
And people ask me, well, what about your brother? What about your brother? He's on death row in California. I'm like, you know what? My brother murdered 4 people.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was time for him to go, then it was time for him to go. And that's what the justice system says. And that's what the law says. And I love him and I'll miss him. But you know what? That's what it is. So I'm not going to
Wow.
be a hypocrite about it because it's my brother.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. That's a that's an amazing story right there to be on both sides of that. Yeah.
yeah, my poor mother.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Um,
Florida. Yeah, a correctional officer in Florida and a death row inmate in California.
hmm. Yeah, that's a hard line to walk there. Absolutely.
Hmm.
And you have to face a lot of probably your own beliefs uh, very bluntly, I would guess.
Yeah. So if
So,
anybody wants to look it up, it's Louis James Peoples. That was my brother.
excellent. So you mentioned you made sergeant.
Mhm.
Were you, from the time you went in, were you looking at some point to go into leadership, or was that something that developed as you were in there and you started looking that direction?
Well, I wanted to be a sergeant, and because sergeants get all the good jobs. Okay,
Okay.
I get to do pretty much what I wanted to do: supervise and walk around, and I'm not tied down in a particular area. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sergeant. Everybody wants to make sergeant, and Should have stayed a sergeant. I made lieutenant. I said to myself, I should have stayed a sergeant. That was the best job I had, was a sergeant. So yeah, I did
Yeah.
that in '85 and made sergeant in '85, and that's when I was able to join the CERT team, Corrections Emergency Response Team, which is like a SWAT team. So I
Yeah.
was able to do that and do all the death house things. That's the rank you have to be able to do all that stuff. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, I just talked a couple of episodes ago. I talked about being part of a team and how important that was to my career, and how important I think it can be to other people's career. I tell rookies, when you come in, as soon as you can get on a team, no matter what kind it is, do it, because not only do you get the chance to get more training and have that camaraderie, but it keeps you focused more, having that group of guys around you. Uh, Tell me a little bit about being on a team. Did that mean a lot to you also?
Yeah, it was great. And for me, coming from California as an outsider,
Mm-hmm.
and it took me a while to get their trust. Okay. But
Sure.
once they knew that I was going to be there when I needed to be there to take care of them and protect them, and then it was all good. It
Right.
didn't matter where I came from after that. I was one of them.
Yeah.
And so once I became one of them and one of the group, one of the guys, and it was great. I've never had closer a family
Sure.
than those guys. I mean,
Yeah.
we worked together. We went to riot squad training and CERT training and all kinds of different things together. We went cell extractions, and it was a good experience. And I miss some of those guys because some of them are dying. They're dead. They're gone,
Yeah.
and I miss them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, tell me a little bit about. You said you made lieutenant. Now, when did you leave Florida State Pen?
I left FSP in 1991, and I went down to Martin CI, which is down in Martin County near a little town called Indiantown.
Okay.
And it just opened up down there, and it was what we call in correctional slang the Wild West. It was a bunch of jitterbugs, and it was wild. It was, you know what I'm talking about. It's
I
wide
do.
open. Stabbings on the rec yard, stabbings in the housing units. It was just brand new place opening up, and they needed some experience down there. So I went down there and I stayed there 4 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they open
I
up
got
those new joints, and that's usually when every other joint dumps whoever they're having problems with.
exactly right. That's what happened. Yeah, I got stabbed twice down there too. So I mean, I've been stabbed before up here, but and scalded, cut, you name it. But that's part of the job. So I stayed down there for 4 years, and the opportunity came for me to make lieutenant back in North Florida, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's where I went. I went up to Putnam Correctional, which is in Putnam County, and made lieutenant up there. And it was different for me. It was strange because I was always a line officer, and as a lieutenant supervisor, you can't. You have to. You have to think about your people all the time. You have to think about the inmates all the time. You're thinking about everything. You're thinking about chow. You're thinking about transport. You're thinking about this and that. You're always having to think about things that are going on, and it's a lot more responsibility.
Yeah.
And that's why I told you maybe I should have stayed a sergeant
Yeah.
because but yeah. So I was a lieutenant. I came back up to North Florida after 4 years, I think, and I stayed at Putnam CI, I think 4 years.
Yeah. It's definitely a wider view. When you're young, and of course, it sounds like we were kind of the same. We start off as COs, you get on the teams, you make sergeant, and you're running and gunning, and people are following you through the door. That's an easy type of leadership. And
Right.
then they didn't prepare me for the next step. I thought it was just going to be more of that. And then you go up and you hit lieutenant and you hit captain, and it's this wider view. You have to have a bigger vision. Not just COs are looking to you, everybody in the institution's looking to you. And I think I had some severe bumps getting used to that as I came up. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was different when you're standing on the side of the cell bars and watching them go in there, and you're having to say, "Okay, that's enough. or hey, cuff him up, or hey, let's get him to the clinic, or whatever. It's a little different than actually going there with the crew.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so tell me, we talked a little bit about the correctional officer's prayer.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come about? What was it that was in you that made you write that was going on at the time? Because I'm going to guess that was a time when you wrote that, when you were probably struggling a little bit, but I'm just guessing at that. Tell me about it.
Yeah, it was near the end of my career. I didn't go the full 25, but it's 25 years for full retirement here in Florida. I didn't go the whole 25. I went 21 years and a few months. So I'd had enough. I was starting to have some physical issues and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. So I said, you know what? It's time to go. So I left at 21 years and a few months. And it was actually before 9/11. It was in 2001. It was in February, I believe. And I looked around on the internet and I'm thinking to myself, they got the police officer's prayer, you've got the fireman's prayer, you've got the teacher's prayer, and you've got the this prayer and that prayer. And I'm like, you know what? There's no correctional officer's prayer. I've never seen that. I mean, I've seen somebody take the word police officer out and put correctional officer in, but that's not the same thing.
Right.
And so I wrote that prayer with the understanding of all the years and things that I've been through and all the people that I've met and all the inmates that I've seen and all the officers I've seen and what it means to go do a job, a thankless job, and to be able to come home after your shift, to your
Sure.
family. And it just came together. It just came together, and it's been used, like you said, it's been used all over. It's been used in Australia and England and everywhere, So I'm very happy.
Do you have that there with you?
Oh, let me. Yeah, I have a copy of it here. I have to refer to it because
Yeah. But for the people who may not have heard it yet, I think it'd be great if you were able to read that. I know you could tell I could tell when I read it that it's written by someone who's been there.
right.
That was the first thing I noticed.
Well, let me see if I can find it here. I had it up, but when this rural electricity went out here, it kind of screwed everything up here.
Sure.
Okay, hold on. Here we go. Yeah, it's coming up right here.
Okay.
Right. Matter of fact, last year, it was included in the memorial for fallen officers in the state of Florida. So it's a nice bronze plaque, and it's a really really nice. Okay, it's Lord, when it's time to go inside that place of steel and stone, I pray that you will keep me safe so I won't walk alone. Help me to do my duty. Please watch me on my rounds amongst those perilous places and slamming steel door sounds. God, keep my fellow officers well and free from harm. Let them know I'll be there too whenever there's alarm. Above all, when I walk my beat, no matter where I roam, let me go back whence I came, to family and home. That's it.
Absolutely. Amen. That's that's the way to end that. Um, one of the passages there that gets me is so I won't walk alone. And that's kind of been something that with this podcast and some of the writing I've been doing that I want to get out there. And we feel so alone. I've been there. I've worked that seg unit. You work it by yourself. Sometimes, it's midnights, it's evenings, and you kind of get lost in the work. And you're running those housing units alone, and you go home and you drive alone, and everybody in the house is asleep when you get home, and you do get this kind of loneliness. And it's interesting that you tapped into that. But one of the things I've just been trying to tell people is, take a look around. And corrections is out in podcasts, books, more than ever before, and I didn't know it till I started this podcast, but I've had over 70 countries that have tuned into the Prison Officer podcast. And
Wow.
before that, I never thought about that. There's somebody in Israel that working a jail. There's somebody in Singapore working a jail. Canada.
Right.
We've talked to Australia. We've talked to England.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not alone. We're
No.
doing the same job with the same thugs They may have a different language or a
Right.
different accent, but it's the same job. So I find that really interesting that you put that in there. And I think that's important for all of us to know that we're not alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like we are sometimes because the press is so ignorant about what we are and who we are and what we do. They're just so ignorant. We're just a bunch of stupid guards. And
Yeah.
what do we know? So that's one of the reasons I wrote the prayer, and just to give us, just to let people know, like you say, we're not out there by ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and that people do care about us on the outside, our families and our fellow officers care about us, and we're there to do a tough job.
Sure.
And we have a slogan. Jim Biardi and I, who's the president of the Florida PBA, and I came up with a slogan called "No guns, just guts." That was
Right.
us. We did that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was an important thing, I think, to write, and a lot of people have responded to it, and I appreciate that. And it's up in Michigan at the Michigan Corrections Officer Slane Memorial
Yeah.
there in Lansing, and it's a few institutions have actually put it into marble inside the facility, inside the little
Yeah.
area before, So I'm very
I've
proud
been
of
to
it.
a couple of I've been to a couple of different memorial services, Correctional Officers Week, and I've heard it read there, absolutely. So I know it's something that is throughout corrections. You talk about, the fact that the media and stuff. Tell me what you think about this, what your thoughts are. You've been around for a while. Corrections, in my opinion, needs to step out and start showing what we do. We've spent so much time hidden. We've spent so much time hiding the videos of what those inmates do inside, of what goes on inside, that the media has had this free reign to just fill it with whatever they want because nobody's countermanding them. They're not saying anything different.
Right.
We're hiding. Do you think it's time for corrections to quit hiding and come out and say, hey, here we are, and here's what we do, and we do it for you? Does that make
I
sense?
do. I do actually. I think it's time, and I think uh, when you have those cell extraction videos,
Mm-hmm.
everybody's first thing they say is, "Oh wow, look at all those guys jumping on that poor defenseless inmate right there." Well, most
Mm-hmm.
of the time, that poor defenseless inmate has been ordered several times to cuff up, has been ordered several times to desist and quit doing what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and usually those kind are the disciplinary problems in the first place.
Right.
And those aren't innocent babes, for talking too loud in church. And I think if we start putting it out there that we are there because we're doing what we're doing because they are the ones that are making us do that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we'd rather be sitting around somewhere doing something else besides having to go into a cell. But yeah, I think a more active role by some of the departments and maybe some of the corrections unions or whatever
Right.
would be a good thing and get our story out there. Because you've only got stories like The Wire. You've seen The Wire on TV, right? The Wire on
Right.
HBO, The Wire, and you've seen some of these other things that are just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think more positive uh, role, more positive thing would be better.
Yeah. I don't know quite how we get that done, but I know there's a lot of people, taking the steps that it takes. Anthony Ganges out there and William Young doing just corrections. There's other podcasts and writing books out there. So I'm really happy about that. So tell me some of the other highlights about your career. Um, what stands out with you?
Well, everybody asked me about Ted Bundy.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
tell me that story.
Yeah. Well, I knew Ted Bundy. He was just another inmate,
Yep.
like the rest of them, and he wasn't anything special. He was a quiet inmate. He didn't really give us any problems. He did try to escape one time. He cut his bars. Him and his cell partner next door. They
Hmm.
did cut their bars.
What'd they
He did
use?
a hacksaw blades that were smuggled in from maintenance.
Ah,
Yeah, and but other than that, I can't remember anything that he did inside that prison that was would have been given. He got a couple of DRs, disciplinary report, for when he went to medical. Sometimes he didn't like some of the things that doctors did or didn't do or whatever. But other than that, but I was down on death watch with Bundy. And when all those guys, all the guys that wrote the books and things about what Bundy told them, and I was sitting there, with all of these guys, listening to all this. And so, I knew Ted Bundy. I mean, he was just like another inmate to me. I mean, so I did watch him die in an electric chair.
Yeah.
Other than that, really nothing to write a book about. It's just what I did, at that particular time.
Yeah.
And I've seen about 17 or 18 executions.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, I wrote a book about J.C. Tefero's execution in 1990. That the one that the sponge caught on fire on the head sponge caught on fire.
Right.
And so that was a messy one. But
what's the name of that book?
Execution Day Journal. It's on Amazon. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll put that in the notes. I didn't know that. I'll take a look at that.
I'll send you a copy if you send me your address.
Okay, that sounds good.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll put it in the notes so people can find it on Amazon.
Okay. My time on the CERT team, working with the SWAT officers, the Orlando PD, and we used to go out to Camp Blanding. They have a huge National Guard base here in Stark, and we'd all go out to Camp Blanding, and we work with different SWAT teams and things, and that was really fun for me. That was a good fun time with all my coworkers. And I was 24 years old, 25, 26 years old, so I was in shape.
Absolutely.
Not like if you can't see that, you can't see the little belly that I have here.
Yeah.
But and so that was fun. Rappelling and practicing snipers and things like that. It was fun.
Yeah. I've got a picture on the wall there of me rappelling. I don't think they make rope like that anymore. Or I don't think I'm going to trust a rope, but
yeah,
those were the days.
Yes,
hard charging and
when you would stray and rappel down, face down, and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Back when we weren't scared to do that and able to do it.
We still have a lot of great guys. I'll be going to the mock prison riot up in West Virginia here, 1st of May, I think, and watching that team competition up there. There's still some hard chargers out there doing some crazy stuff.
I've never heard of that. Is that a baton squad contest? What is that?
It's kind of like SHOT Show for corrections. It's at the old West Virginia Penitentiary. Teams from all over the country come there.
Moundsville or
Moundsville.
Okay.
Yep. And all the people who sell stuff, I go up there with PEPPERBALL and I'll teach some classes. But it's a great time, and it's great seeing all those correctional staff coming together, and they get to spend 3 days setting up real scenarios and doing real things inside that prison with and the PEPPERBALL and everything. We'll pass out PEPPERBALL systems and let them go use them and see how it works.
Right.
And then they have a skills competition for the teams on the first day.
Okay.
And it's all running and jumping and rappelling. And,
oh, wow.
It's fun to watch.
Yeah.
So what do you see for corrections in the next few years? I mean, we all know retention, recruitment, that's what everybody's talking about.
Right.
What are some of the challenges that you still keep up with all this, I suppose?
I do to a certain extent. Every once in a while, when there's a particular bill in the legislature for pensions or for the current officers, I try to go up there and I do a little lobbying, with the PBA president up here in Florida. And we're getting more and more technical with some of the things that we're doing. Some of the defensive weapons and some of the cell extraction techniques are different. They're changing. It's just not 6 guys run in and just however you got to get it, and you got to get him.
Yeah,
it's changing, and it's a new world, and which is good, which is fine. Safe for the staff, safe for the inmate, even though he's a jerk.
Right.
But I see that technology becoming part more part of the corrections job. So,
Right.
yeah.
And technology is becoming part of the contraband also, with
Yes,
the
it is.
drones and the cell phones. And
Yes.
uh, I was listening the other day, and I think it was Senator Cotton, and I guess he's really trying to finally get some of this cell phone jamming going, so that they can, or not jamming, anyway, where they take cell phone signals away from the whole institution, not
Mm-hmm.
just an individual phone. So
Right.
a lot of that's coming to light, and that's good to see. That's going to help them working inside.
Well, we didn't have cell phones back in the day. We had kite strings. If the inmates wanted to send contraband to each other, you know what I'm talking about? Kite
I
strings.
do, absolutely.
Okay, everybody who knows anything about corrections knows what kite stringing is,
Yep.
and they're very, very good at it. I've seen people move. My God, pillowcases full of canteen items. I couldn't understand how they got it across the roof, but they got it across the roof and across this
Yep.
roof and across that roof, and it was amazing.
Yeah, that was one of the back when I was younger, and we would sneak down the pipe chases and
Ah,
try to pop out and just run down the range and try to grab up the strings, and see what we got.
right, right. I
But
like to get up on the roof and go up there with my little pair of scissors, and you know, and they call me
sure,
six kinds of whatever, and I get off the roof, and but I'd be, it'd
yeah,
be good. They wouldn't get their stuff because it fell in the yard, so
yeah.
just for fun.
So what are you working on now? You working on anything? You go
No,
riding on foot?
I'm just being retired. I just got married again, and
Okay,
yeah, and I'm
congratulations.
just thank you. And I'm just living life with my new wife and I. We're just living here in Florida and just kind of enjoying enjoying things. And we're both retired, so yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing. I just get up and then just go, what am I going to do today?
There is
So
life after corrections.
yes, there is. Yeah, yeah.
That's good. That's important. So if somebody wanted to get contact with you, you have an email that I can throw up on the deal?
Sure, I do. It's lepkmp at gmail.com.
Okay. Well, I sure appreciate the conversation today. It's interesting hearing about all that. Thank you for writing that poem. Like I said, I know it's been used. I've heard it a dozen times in memorial services and stuff. It's always meant something to me. I know it means something to other folks. So I appreciate you doing that, and appreciate you being on the show today.
Well, thank you, Mike, very much. I appreciate you. You're an awesome guy. I like your podcast very much.
I appreciate that. Yep. We'll try to keep it coming.
Okay, thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Well, thanks for listening today. And before we go, I'd like to take a minute to thank one of our sponsors. Omni Real-Time Locating System is a company that I've been working closely with for the last couple of years. I'm proud to be part of this innovative team that has developed the best real-time locating system on the market for your jail or prison. Omni's PREA-compliant real-time monitoring technology is the very best way to track and record the locations and interactions of all the inmates and assets throughout every square inch of your facility. Imagine getting an alarm the second an escape happens, or being able to send a medical response the second an inmate's heart rate drops below a defined level. To learn more about Omni, go to www.omnirtls.com or click the link below in today's show notes. Omni Real-Time Locating System is a powerful tool designed specifically for the modern correctional professional. If you haven't done so, please take a moment to like my podcast, or better yet, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for listening, and be safe out there.